All right, well, thank you all for joining us today, both on Zoom and in person. My name is Brittany Gorgas, and I am the coordinator for the Crow Wing County Master Gardener Volunteer Program. And today we have Paula Schwartz talking about our Majestic Monarch. Paula's been a Master Gardener volunteer since 2021. She's a retired doctor of audiology, and she is happy to be in retirement in Brainerd, where she has many established perennial pollinator and vegetable gardens. She's been a hobby beekeeper for 7 years, and monarch butterflies are a relatively new passion for her that she's really dove into and learned a lot. So you guys are in for a treat today. Thanks, Paula.
Thank you, Brittany. So welcome, everybody, and thank you for taking time out of your day to learn a little bit more about our beloved monarch butterfly. So today, let's try advancing. It's not advancing, Brittany.
Oh, if you click right on the slide, you tap on the slides first.
Got it.
Yes, there you go.
So we're going to talk about some fun facts about the monarch. We'll go through the monarch life stages or the life cycle. A little bit about the migration, the eastern and western migration of the monarch butterfly. Area sightings, which I'm excited to share with you because it's something that happened to me last year. And I also tag monarchs, so we can talk a little bit about the tagging procedure and what's involved in that. The overwintering concerns, the threats to the monarchs here in the United States. Can't speak to the rest of the world, but we do know what's happening here in the United States. What we can all do to help save the monarch, why native plants are important and the importance of milkweed, and how you can get involved. So the first fun fact is that once a monarch butterfly hatches, it lives only 4 to 6 weeks, unless it is the generation of late summer and fall, which is what we see here in Minnesota. And that is the generation that will fly all the way down to Mexico for overwintering. But the butterflies that we're seeing now at this time of the year will only live 4 to 6 weeks because they are our productive or reproductive monarchs. So a little bit about the life cycle of the monarch. So there are 4 distinct life stages. There's the egg, the larva or the caterpillar, the pupa, and the adult. And this entire life cycle takes about a month, 30 days. So a few interesting facts about the egg laying process is the female monarch will smell the milkweed with her antenna, and she tastes it with her feet. They have very poor vision, this is how it's done. She cuts the milkweed with spurs on her legs and prefers young, healthy milkweed. And the eggs are typically laid underneath the leaf. If any of you have looked for the eggs on a milkweed leaf, I'll have some pictures in a moment. And a female in her life can lay 300 to 400 eggs. Obviously, not all make it to adulthood. As a matter of fact, a very small percent has survival rate. 1 to 4% of her eggs will make it to adulthood. So spiders, mites, ladybugs, and fire ants are those that will eat the eggs off of the milkweed leaves. And the bugs and wasps eat the larvae, caterpillar, and adult monarchs. So these are my pictures. This was taken last summer or the summer before. And I was watching very carefully. As soon as I'd see a female monarch, I was looking under all my leaves. But this is some eggs that I had found. So every day I would go back and look at more, but I don't have that picture. So let me go back. You'll see a picture of it later, what it looks like once it hatches. So the life stages of after the egg, you have the larva or the caterpillar or the instar, as we call it. And there are actually 5 stages, and they are the first, second, third, fourth, and fifth instars. And this entire process takes only about 18 days from the time that the larva hatches from the egg and to when it goes into the pupa or the chrysalis is about 18 days. So the instars have feelers for touch and smell. They breathe through holes in their sides. They have 6 true legs on their thorax, and the prolegs are attached to the abdomen and are present only in this caterpillar stage, and again, have very poor vision. So as it goes through each of the 5 instars, it will molt and it sheds that outer skin and grows out of it and becomes a much bigger caterpillar. So here are some actual pictures of the size, well, not the actual size for you particularly, but of the different sizes of the instars. And remember, this is how quickly it grows in 18 days. This is the picture I was looking for. This is the next day after I'd found the egg. And so obviously it has hatched. You can see the size of the pupa or the caterpillar, and the egg is still there. I do believe that it will ingest that egg, but it's also eating the underside of that milkweed leaf. That's my bandaged finger, but again, see how tiny that little caterpillar is. So when you're looking for them, you have to look closely. And the monarch caterpillar will gain about 2,700 times its weight in just that 18 days, 2 weeks to 18 days. So they grow quickly, and they can take down a leaf very quickly. In 4 minutes, they can devour an entire milkweed leaf in 4 minutes. All right. So this is a video that you're going to see from the process that the larva goes through to the pupa stage, and enjoy. Let's see if I press it. There we go. So what you saw there was obviously the caterpillar turning into the pupa, which is that green thing that hangs. What we didn't see was the monarch hatching from that. And it's really quite a beautiful sight. So the chrysalis, which is also called the pupa, is a vase-shaped case. It starts out green with golden dots, and then it turns very transparent. If you were lucky enough to see that or be raising monarchs, you would then see the color of the monarch within that. The monarch hatches out of the bottom of it, hangs there for a little bit while it dries out, because the monarch can't fly if it's wet, and you have hatched a new monarch butterfly. Oh, I guess, oh, I had 2 videos. makes me, it's a miracle. That's all I can say. Let's see if we can get this to go. Oh. How can we go forward? No.
And then I think it's gonna make me do. Mhm. There we go.
There we go. I think. Yep.
Okay.
So the monarch wings are transparent. The wing is formed by layers of chitin, I believe it's pronounced chitin, a protein that makes up the insect's exoskeleton. And these layers on their wings are so thin that you can actually see through them. And they're comprised of thousands of tiny scales that cover this. And the scales reflect light in different colors. And as that monarch ages, those scales start to fall off the wings, leaving spots of transparency where this layer is exposed. So it's very easy to tell the difference between a male and a female monarch. So if you see a monarch on one of your flowers, all you need to do is to look for those two little black dots on the bottom of, basically I'll call it the torso, and that would be a male monarch. So if you see one without the dots, like on the right-hand side, that is a female monarch. So those are called androchroneal pouches, which are the alar spots visible on the hind wings for the male. They also have the thinner black wing veins. So the male has thinner veins. They also have the claspers on the abdomen to grasp the female during mating. So the female, of course, then has wider veins and does not have those pouches. There are also monarch lookalikes that we see some of these here. You have the painted lady, the monarch, of course, and the viceroy looks very similar to the monarch, but as you can see, the veins are very different, and the queen butterfly. So we have several others in the orange color family that look similar to the monarch. So where do the monarchs go in the winter? Before I talk about that, I want to share with you my experience last August. I was actually in Barrett, Minnesota, visiting a friend. Barrett's up near Alexandria, if you're familiar with where, and we were out looking at her gardens, and I looked up, and in the aspen trees were thousands of monarchs, thousands of them. And these are my pictures, so I'm just sharing. Let's see if I have more. And this was later in the day, so they were roosting. And my only guess is that they were a group of monarchs that were in the migratory pattern headed to Mexico. And it was surreal. I've never experienced anything before. And I don't know if they'd ever come back to the same area. And I did not have any of my tagging materials with me. I would have been able to tag hundreds and hundreds and hundreds had I had my materials with me, but I did not. But it was just, for someone that loves monarchs, it was such a gift to be able to see this. So, keep your eyes open when this is going on. It's not just one monarch at a time. You have the ability, or hopefully the opportunity, to see something like this.
What was the name of the town?
Barrett, Barrett. Just some friends that have it's on a lake, but they had all these trees, and it was wonderful. So this is just took some pictures of my daughter and myself tagging some monarchs, and anyone can do it. You would just contact, or you would go on to monarchwatch.org and you order your tags, and they will give you tags, and each tag has a number on it. So each monarch, it has a number on it. And I happened to order only 50 because I had no idea if I'd catch any or whatever. I ended up only tagging 12 at my home last fall. But you do the net, and it shows you how to hold them. You take your little sticker, and there's me putting one on the monarch, and then this is what it looks like. It's just a little sticker that stays on their wing. And should that monarch be found, dead or alive, in Mexico on the road, I would have gotten notification. So it's sort of cool. I didn't receive any notifications, so I don't know what happened to my 12 monarchs. But it was, and I hope to do more this year. But this is how Monarch Watch and all of the organizations that are watching the population status and everything that's going on with the monarchs, how they know where they go, what their numbers are, and all of that. So it's a fun process, and anyone can do it. So all you have to do is order your tags through Monarch Watch, and then you have to report when you've tagged them, what the numbers are, was it a male or female, and where it was that you tagged them. And that's just on a spreadsheet then that you send back to Monarch Watch. So
Need to start doing that in August.
yeah, they won't even send you the tags till I want to say even it was closer to September. Because they don't want this generation to be tagged. They only want the fall, the migratory generation to be tagged. So the question is how did we find out that our monarchs wintered in Mexico? Well, there was a Canadian biologist, a Dr. Fred Urquhart, that realized this and had been for decades searching for where the monarchs migrated. And in the August 1976 issue of National Geographic, they basically revealed it to the world. No one knew until this National Geographic issue came out. And I actually have a copy of this, and it's wonderful. We finally found out where they go. And these green areas, these are the areas of Mexico. This is sort of west of Mexico City, I believe. It's been defined as a UNESCO World Heritage Site. It is very protected, but the numbers of monarchs, at least currently getting into these areas, is significantly decreased. So these green areas now may be a little less, but they do know where the monarchs winter. And there are 12 places that have the habitat that they need, that the monarchs need to survive. And again, here's the area on the map. So they cluster on the trunks of Oyamel fir trees in Mexico at an altitude of 10,000 feet. And obviously that's the secret. It has to do with the altitude and the trees. And it's thought that as many 50 million monarchs can winter in this area of Mexico. And obviously that number changes from year to year, which we'll talk about in a little bit. And the monarch is the only butterfly known to make a two-way migration as birds do. But remember, the monarch that leaves Mexico in the spring is not the same butterfly that gets back to Mexico. So that one will leave Mexico, now this is a reproductive monarch, will start laying eggs, and that monarch will probably die. Then the next generation makes it up to the central states, and then the next generation makes it to Minnesota, and then they go up to Canada. But it's only, remember, it's the only fall generation that is non-reproductive that will make it all the way back to Mexico. It's called diapause, and we'll talk about that in a moment. So how do they know when and where to migrate? It is not completely known. Researchers think that monarchs use directional aids, such as the magnetic pull of the earth and the position of the sun, to know where to go. And it's believed that they use the cues of length of days and falling temperatures to know when to migrate. So there are two migrations. There's the eastern and the western migration. And again, like I just mentioned, there's up to 4 generations, the first, second, third, and then the fourth that comes all the way back down. Minnesota and Wisconsin and around all of us, we are part of the eastern migration, and the western migration stays primarily in California. So if we talk about that migration briefly, this occurs from November to March. And these monarchs do not go to Mexico, they stay in California, because California has the Monterey pine and the cypress trees and that 10,000-foot elevation. So the monarchs are able to stay right in California rather than migrating all the way to Mexico. They also have Australian eucalyptus for nectar and roosting. There's a problem, obviously, in California. We have wildfires, we have loss of open space. And so the western migration, at least when I did this presentation, was down 99% according to National Geo. So the monarchs aren't doing very well in California. Now, the eastern migration, again, which we are a part of, that their hormones are activated as the temperature warms and days lengthen in Mexico. And so then they journey to Texas and the Gulf state before that generation lays eggs and dies. Then they continue on to the Midwest and Canada, like I said, and the summer monarchs are reproductive. And again, their lifespan is short, 2 to 4 weeks, 2 to 5 weeks. The third or fourth generation is the one that migrates to Mexico from the Midwest, East Coast, and Southern Canada. And again, their lifespan can be up to 9 months, migrating back to Mexico. And these are monarchs that are in diapause or non-reproductive. And this migration, according to Nat Geo in 2022, is down 80%. All right.
How do you tell the difference between a reproductive and a productive?
You don't, you just have to go by month, basically the time of the year. I would think maybe all of those that I saw in Barrett, I would assume were the non-reproductive because they were all headed to Mexico. But like they said, it has to do with the falling temperatures and the length of days, and which changes all of that. Good question, though. It's a good question. I don't know. Good question.
Yeah.
They obviously must. Their hormones kick back in because they're reproducing when they get up into Texas. Good question. I hadn't thought about that. So maybe diapause means that they're capable of reproducing, but in that process, they're not reproducing till they get to Mexico, and then their hormones change. Great question. I will see what I can. Good question.
And these late ones live 6 to 9 months.
Yeah, so you figure, late summer into early spring when they leave Mexico. Yes.
So how do we get the eggs here?
The question is, how do we get the eggs here? That's not that generation. We're in the first, second, and third generation that are traveling north.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. We're still,
They're reproducing.
right now they're reproducing in Minnesota. Yes.
So there are 2 reproductive places then. On the way, somewhere?
All the way, all the way from when they leave Mexico to they get north, and then when they start that cycle south is diapause, non-reproductive.
Okay, but they do reproduce in Mexico?
Well, when they leave,
On the way?
I don't know if they reproduce in Mexico, but because they leave there.
Okay, so it's only the northward migration.
Correct. Correct. All right, some more fun facts. They can't fly if they're cold or wet. If air temperatures impact, obviously, their ability to function. Their ideal body temperature is 85 degrees. The cooler days require a butterfly to warm up flight muscles by shivering or basking in the sun. So again, that's my picture. No, that's not my picture. But those other pictures I sent from Barrett, they didn't fly when I walked by because they were too cold. They were all just roosting on the trees. So what are the threats to monarchs in Mexico? They're losing habitat by illegal logging. Some say climate change, higher temperatures in Mexico stressing those fir trees, beetles attacking the oyamel fir trees, and harsh winter storms causing fatalities, not in Mexico, but on the way down or on the way up. Yeah, that was just a severe weather. So the threats to the monarchs in the US, temperatures, droughts, storm events, stress nectar and roosting sites. So, obviously there's habitat loss in the United States all over, right? We've got development of 6,000 acres per day, 2.2 million acres per year are, turning into housing developments. Milkweed reduction, intensive agriculture, milkweed loss, 100 million acres of herbicide tolerant corn and soybeans allows indiscriminate spraying. It's killing our milkweed. The roadsides and ditches are all sprayed. You know, milkweed is considered to be a weed, so we better get rid of it or mow it down. And that's where we often see a lot of our milkweed. Many consider it a weed. The counties consider it a weed. People that spray for mosquitoes or gypsy moths will also, you know, be killing, will affect the monarch butterfly. And there's a new concern with something called a tropical milkweed. This is more so in the southern states. It's a milkweed that is actually quite beautiful, but I don't know the exact details, but it's messing with the monarch's natural life cycle. And I don't know in what way, but it's being called it is a milkweed, but it's not the swamp or the common milkweed, which is what the monarchs prefer. And the mowing, as we are noticing now, is done when milkweed and important plants are needed the most. So there are about 130 varieties of milkweed in the world. There are more than 70 species of milkweed native to the US, and 30 of them are used by monarch butterflies. But again, the two most common are swamp milkweed and common milkweed. So why is milkweed important? It is actually the host plant for the entire life cycle of the monarch butterfly. The milkweed also has toxins that are called cardiac glycosides, and these toxins make the monarch poisonous to most things that eat them. You know, also the color of the caterpillar is supposed to be a signal to the birds and the predators that are going to eat them to stay away, because these cardiac glycosides that are ingested by the monarch and the caterpillar will make whatever eats them very ill. The adults are bright colored as a warning sign to predators like birds. And the milkweed serves as the nursery for the complete monarch life cycle from egg to butterfly. It serves both as food and protection. So again, the eggs are laid on them. The caterpillar and the 5 instar stages eat the milkweed leaves. The pupa is typically not always hangs from the milkweed, but the caterpillar will often leave the milkweed to form that pupa, and it hangs in somewhere where they feel safe, and then the butterfly emerges. But that's why milkweed is very important for the monarch butterfly. So here's what the common milkweed looks like. You've seen it or grow it. You can buy it in our nurseries that have native plants, and it attracts not just monarch butterflies, but many pollinators, and spreads by rhizomes into large clumps. The swamp milkweed has deeper pink flowers. It prefers this year's moist, rich soil in our gardens. It is a monarch favorite, and it also feeds other pollinators also. Also has fibrous roots that can be divided and transplanted easily. The butterfly weed is, monarchs love it. They don't necessarily, it's not the host plant for the monarch, but they love it for a nectar source. And this prefers well-drained soils. It can be grown in clay and is very drought tolerant. This is actually one of my pictures. I just have to show it because I thought it was great. I was taking a picture of this monarch butterfly. You see the little fly that was sucking the nectar out of that at the same time. And I didn't see it until I had taken the picture. All right, so the milkweed restoration, the challenges. Again, there's lack of knowledge by many as to the importance of milkweeds. And again, they consider them weeds, so all weeds need to be eliminated. There's a plant and seed shortage, especially the local genotypes. Although I have to disagree, I think there's a very increasing market for milkweed. You can find it almost anywhere and in any nursery. And there's a misunderstanding about the toxicity of it. It's not toxic elsewhere. So the monarchs, some more fun facts. They live on an all liquid diet. Monarchs, usually nectar. There's a modification of their mouth parts that enables them to drink through a proboscis, which is like a drinking straw out of their mouth, and it comes out underneath their chin. And once a monarch finds its source of nutrition, it unfurls this structure and sips up a meal. And monarchs will also drink from mud puddles, which are rich in minerals and salts. So not just nectar. So what can you do? You can become an advocate. You can plant milkweed. You can protect butterfly habitats. You know, some people can get involved at the state and community level, working with public officials, trying to get more pollinator gardens, such as we do at the Arboretum here. And again, just plant milkweed. And one of the things, if you do all of those things, you can become what's called a Monarch Way Station. And again, all you do is apply at monarchwatch.org. You have to have, it's not just milkweed, you also have to have a variety of other pollinator friendly plants in your gardens. But what they're trying to do is identify that, if, like, in other words, if they find an area of the United States where there aren't many way stations, then this organization will try to put way stations there, because the monarchs need these way stations to obtain their food source on their migration down to Mexico, and also on their path to the north. And so we're really hoping that there are more and more of these way stations that people will design, so that the monarchs have the food source that they need for their flights. So what are some of the other plants that you can plant that the monarchs like? And here's sort of a list. These are all native nectar plants. Of course, milkweed is #1, but phlox, New Jersey tea, bergamot, buttonbush, wild indigo, coneflowers, vervain, mountain mint, Joe Pye weed, coreopsis, black-eyed Susan, blazing stars, ironweed, sunflowers, goldenrod, and asters. And I also see them on my cosmos, which is obviously an annual, but it's they seem to love the cosmos also. So there's a lot of plants that you can do. Most of these are perennial, not the sunflowers. And again, the native nurseries have all of these plants for you. It's always good to be buying plants in your area. So our monarchs on the endangered species list, they have never been on the United States Fish and Wildlife endangered species list. They were, however, on the International Union of Conservation Red List. Now, people say, well, are they truly endangered? In the United States, they are. But our Fish and Wildlife endangered species list did not place them on the list for a couple reasons. #1 is, if they put them on the list, they would have to spend money to address the issue. And when they look at all the various animals and birds and whatever that are endangered, monarch butterflies didn't reach the top of the list for them to be listed. Additionally, in other parts of the world, the monarchs are not endangered. So they were sort of looking at everything, saying, is this where we want to spend our money, our government? And so they did not make it, but they were on the International Union of Conservation Red List. But in December of 23, it was changed from endangered to vulnerable. So, and I read a little bit more about that. And basically what they were saying is that they are recognizing that the monarch populations are fluctuating from year to year, but they're not necessarily going down and staying down. We have issues from all of the things that we've talked about, but they're not on the endangered species list. We need to take care of them. We need to do more things to protect them, but they're being considered invulnerable and not endangered. So I guess that's the good news. So the monarch was adopted as the Minnesota state insect in the year 2000, and we sort of look at them as flagships for conservation. If our monarch populations are down, my guess is other populations are down. We should be conserving and creating habitat to help all the pollinators, not just the monarch butterflies. And it helps people develop an interest in this area. And it's our unity in this effort will lead to the protection of our environment in general. This was some data from February of 24, more recent data. There were 9 colonies were located in Mexico, which is a 59.3 area decrease from last year. And this has been the second lowest number to date. But what did we have last year around the United States? We had drought. And if there's my honeybee production was terrible last year because we had very little nectar and pollen because everything was so dry. You know, a lot of our native natural plants didn't even flower. And so if that's happening all over the United States, then the monarchs don't have the food source that they need to go through their flight patterns. And again, these numbers are thought to be last year because of the drought season in Oklahoma. And like I said, it reduces the flowering and nectar production. But this is not the first time the numbers have fallen so low. The monarchs have been resilient and have come back. And now let's see what happens this year with all of the rain. You know, so it's the exact opposite of last year. So maybe we're in hopes that we'll have, you know, much higher numbers this year. So the term web of life is just not a flowery cliche, it's reality and everything is connected, and we love our monarchs. So does anyone have any questions? Yes.
Who actually does the weed trimming on the county highways and state highways or American highways, federal highways?
Well, it's the county. I'm sure it's the Department of Transportation, I would think, if it's not private property.
So how
I-
do you reach those people to stop them from doing?
So the question was, is who is mowing the ditches in the county and the city? I would assume you would just start reaching out to your county or city Department of Transportation and just simply ask that question. Who can I talk to about that's about the mowing of, you know, whatever area you're talking about? I'm sure they would.
Because what actually is the point of the
They think it's a weed. It's a good question. What's the point of them mowing that down?
so more of this is the most of it to keep actually is back and going.
Buckthorn and, yeah, right, right.
The townships
Is it,
also, and townships have more power than
the comment is the townships are responsible for a lot of these decisions of what gets mowed and what doesn't get mowed.
But there's also, I talked to the USDA about the problem with, the wild parsnip. If they see those kinds of weeds, which are so dangerous
Invasive,
to
right.
people and animals, they'll mow. So, because every plant has 200,000 seeds. It's
Right,
allowed to.
right.
And if you mow it before, and that's one of the things they're after is that anything on the noxious weed.
There you go. For those online, if you can't hear what was said, is that the often the ditches or areas are mowed to control the noxious and the toxic other weeds, not just the milkweed. So that makes sense. Yes.
I was gonna say, maybe we can do presentations to the highway departments, they might change, but they have their, okay, thank you.
Private
Yeah, thank you.
landowners are huge.
Yeah. Right. And planting them in your corners of your yard or your gardens. Yes.
Wasn't there a program here a few years ago about the milkweed? It was a program from what, Minnesota all the way down to Texas.
Lawns to legumes? No, that,
That were planting the roadsides with milkweed for the.
yeah, I'm not familiar with that.
It was, I don't know. Who it was by, I think it was a government thing, but they were going to, you know, increase the milkweed for the butterfly.
Right. And again, when they look at these way stations or whatever, they're really looking for pockets that need more way stations, basically. You know, so that's how they can monitor all that.
My question is, and maybe I missed something here. So a butterfly, a monarch, lays its egg here in Minnesota, becomes a butterfly. And then he's only got 4 to 6 weeks to live.
And so
So
then,
then that egg, the egg that he lays, say in whatever, August, then that's a butterfly that heads south.
yes, if that's the timing, correct.
I don't,
And then it may be very well that egg, you know, the eggs that are laid in Wisconsin stay, you know, that generation stays in our area for a period of time. They're not always on the move up and always on the move, migratory pattern down.
But then going back to Mexico, then that butterfly only lasts, I don't know how long it takes them
Well,
to go from here.
but that is the question is how long does the butterfly live that goes south to Mexico? That is the migratory generation that lives 8 to 9 months, because even when they get down to Mexico, now they hibernate.
Okay.
And they're gonna live there on these Oyamel fir trees for several months. And then make it back up to Texas to start laying the next generation. It's amazing. It's really amazing.
We have a lot of milkweed.
No, I do what I can in my garden. I have not, the first year that I did this, I took a couple instars, the caterpillars into my home just because I wanted to watch them more so. And I did, and I got to the point where they were, you know, they were large, and I go, I'm gonna put them back into nature where nature can do a better job than I can. But I know that kids do it in school. It's not difficult. It's a wonderful, wonderful project for children to do, and it's not difficult.
Not this story. They're okay to raise not one.
I don't know that you can do harm, as long as you have the milkweed access to, because they eat a lot of it. And you've got to provide that for them. I have a friend actually in Florida who raises them in her home, and she's raising dozens and dozens and lets them go. So I don't think, not that I've heard of, no concern of diseases that I've heard of.
My mother had two last week.
Wonderful, wonderful.
We have a lot of milkweed in our country house. And it was a few years ago, and then I found, I found the caterpillar. And then I was going, I'm gonna bring that in. No, you gotta leave it there, mother. And me with my curiosity, I put it in a jar and I, you know, fed it fresh milkweed every day. And then pretty soon.
Did you have a
it
pupa?
started turning. And then when it turned black, and it was out in our garage, so it was quiet, because that's another thing I learned,
Yeah.
I like quiet. And I put it in the garage and just watched it and fed it every day. And then it got black, and my husband said, I think it's dead. I said, no, I'm just gonna leave it. And then.
And it hatched?
turned into a butterfly.
Oh, wonderful,
Gosh. And then I've done that now with my grandkids. You know,
wonderful,
we go looking for caterpillars.
wonderful.
You know, it's fun.
I think they should be kept quiet too. They kept telling them out there. She carried the jar with banana around the whole, wherever she goes. And shaking my thing around and he said, don't do it.
Oh.
Do you have any questions online?
You watched, that's a good job, great job.
But it is just amazing.
It's just miraculous.
And then a couple of weeks ago, I was over at the Arb. And along the garden there at the end. They had the swamp milkweed. Oh, we must have been seeing 10, 12 caterpillars. They were really all different sizes,
Wonderful, wonderful.
so they were doing well.
That's all right. Well, thank you.
Thank you,
everybody.
everyone.
And
Thank you.
Paula.
Welcome, welcome.
Thanks for attending online all. And next month will be the second Tuesday of the month, and Tracy Schrock will be talking about seed saving. So, seed saving basics.